So, David, in your experience, what are some key strategies for building and maintaining strong relationships with key stakeholders such as payers, investors, regulatory bodies, and healthcare providers?
Great. Shaq, that's an important part of the job of any leader. And I would say not just the CEO, but all leaders within an organization, the folks that you've mentioned, the stakeholders at least, with the regulators, the investors, healthcare providers, as well as payers. And those are just a few. But one doesn't have to be the CEO only to do that. And as a CEO, it's really important to do that. With regulators, I'll give you an example. What I was able to do when we were at Mirati, because most of the FDA meetings, well, they're all now virtual. They're either in writing or they're virtual. So I was able to attend those conversations throughout the whole review cycle virtually and be there in the room with the team when we were having the FDA interactions throughout the entire review cycle. And then also you can even be there for IND conversations, type B, type C meetings. So it's important to be there. So that's just one way, but also just keeping up with the regulatory changes. There's so many conferences and online opportunities just to keep up to what the latest and greatest. Project Optimus in the oncology space has certainly taken up a lot of the news space in the last few years, and that's really important as you're moving a drug through the development cycle in oncology. So it's being present and learning as much as you can. The face-to-face dialogue is a little bit more of a challenge because of virtual nature, but virtual has been great. It's one thing I've been able to do the last few years with the regulatory bodies. So I think in a way that's been an advantage of virtual. It's expanded the number of people that can participate and be in the live conversations with the regulatory body. EMA is the same way. So I was able to do the same thing with EMA over the last few years as well. So that's just an idea there for regulators. For investors, there's so many formal conferences we have as a public company that we could participate in, and those are great. But the informal part is also really important, and it's not just group meetings. I think having a combination of group meetings, one-on-one meetings with investors is really important as well, and having a good IR colleague that can help establish that when looking at the cap table. You want to make sure your top investors have access. You have access to them, they have access to you, and not just you, but also your subject matter experts. So the head of development, head of commercial, whatever that may be. But I think it is building a relationship with those investors. And there's also the investors that are looking at the company. They're watching the story. They're on the sidelines, and it takes them normally quite a long time to build up their business case to invest in that company. And you spend a lot of time with investors that aren't in your stock at that point in time. And that's really important as well. So I would try to spend as much time as I could with, not current investors, but investors we really would like into the stock. And the same with private companies. It's, thinking of private company experience as well. Who could potential investors be in your private entity? And that's an important part of the world. Plus, you get a lot of feedback. You get a lot of feedback on your strategy. You get feedback on your execution, on your plans. And you look at it as a learning opportunity because these investors, they see a pretty broad landscape of companies and things that work well and things that don't work well, and take their advice. Healthcare providers, what I would say, Shaq, you can't sit in the office 5 days a week. And that's never been the case, I don't think, in our business. But it definitely, if you're in the office too much and if you're not a super frequent flyer and, you're probably not out there enough with your customers. And that's attending not just medical meetings. Think of advisory boards. They're virtual now. So you've got an opportunity now to be many places around the world without even leaving your office. But there's no substitute for face-to-face, informally and formally, the key opinion leaders. And those key opinion leaders, to me, they're not just physicians, they're maybe advocacy groups, they're payers and so on. Who are these KOLs? And actually you have a list. Who do I need to get close to? So leverage your medical affairs organization, your access organization, your development organization. And to me, you watch out for, if I've got folks in the development team that aren't close to KOLs, that's a watch out for me. And why not? Why do you not know that key opinion leader, that professor, whoever it may be? You need to know them personally. And so it's something I use to evaluate my team. And then also the all important payers. It's really important. And anybody that's launched a drug in the last 5 to 10 years will know, it's one thing to get your drug registered. It's another thing to have it reimbursed. And reimbursement challenges are only increasing. And being as close as you can to the payers and understanding the payer dynamics and what it's going to take to get your drug listed and reimbursed at a fair price as soon as possible so patients can have access to it, that's really important. And that's not just when your drug gets approved, that's early in the life cycle. Are we building a dossier where this drug will be reimbursed at a fair price? So, but more than anything, it's knowing who these people are and taking the time to focus externally on those stakeholders. It's a real important part of the job, and one, frankly, I like. And I think it goes back to starting my career as a sales rep. There's nothing like hearing firsthand from the customer what's going on, and that's what I appreciate.